Grace to you all this morning and peace from God our Father and from our Lord and Savior Jesus the Christ. Amen. Well, it's really wonderful to see you all here this morning. It's a good day to be together. It's a good Sunday to take time out to worship. I hope your summers are going well and you're finding some time for that very precious gift that Jesus talks about, that he offers to his disciples, that gift of rest. For those of you who are curious, I've seen that I've come back from vacation with a little bit of a sore throat. This is water. And if it weren't water, you'd be able to tell pretty soon, I think so. So sheep are like missiles. Sheep are like missiles. The guided ones work much better than the misguided or the unguided ones. We have plenty of evidence of that in our lives, don't we? Misguided, unguided missiles blow up anywhere and cause a tremendous amount of damage and destruction that was not intended. Sheep are the same kind of way. Misguided, unguided sheep wander off in their own direction and cause a tremendous amount of destruction and damage, either to themselves or to other people, and sometimes, too often, as we experience in our lives, to both. Why are there then so many misguided sheep out there? And you know that we've moved from the realm very quickly of agriculture to talking about our human experience. So often in the Gospels, Jesus' children are described as sheep. It's not a flattering title when you think about it. And yet there's something very important about that identity as being someone who can be described as a sheep. It always implies a relationship with a shepherd. Because sheep are like missiles. Misguided, unguided ones go off in the wrong place, but guided ones, those who are shepherded, are given some direction in their lives, do a tremendous amount of good, are a real blessing. Have you heard too much about misguided, unguided sheep these days? I'm thinking especially of the tragedy in Colorado. Nobody knows what happened to James Holmes to make him do the things that he did. Or at least nobody that we're aware of. And all we see is the result of a misguided person, to be as kind as we possibly can to him, a misguided person who caused a tremendous amount of damage and destruction. The evaluation of that is not even in yet. What happened is the question that we all want to have answered, as if somehow it will make sense at some point. Maybe if we could only get inside of his mind. Now that's a scary idea, I think. But people are thinking if we could only get inside of his mind and understand his motivations, maybe then the world wouldn't be such a scary, uncertain place, because there'd be a way to define why he did what he did, and more importantly, prevent it from ever happening again in the future. That's what we want. If you've watched any of the news coverage of this tragedy, you've seen people telling you what the lesson was that we have to learn from this, what the message is in this man's actions. The message is, one newscaster said, that we have to be more vigilant. Really? Is that the message of this uncertain, chaotic tragedy that happened? That we have to be even more vigilant these days? That's what I really want for all of you. To be more fearful, less secure, more paranoid about who might be around you and what kind of weapons they might be carrying and what their intentions might be. Is that the message that we're to derive from this horrible, chaotic tragedy that was random? If that's the message, then we need to have metal detectors installed at the doors of our church. Because if it happened there, why not here? I fear for our attendance if that's the message of this random act, that we have to look out, because a visitor coming in to this congregation might well be one who's a little bit off and might threaten all our lives. That's not the message of this act. Can we be content not to know what the message is just yet? Not as human beings. We want to understand what the guidance system was on James Holmes that led him to do what he did, so that we can make sure that he's not us, we're not him, and that won't happen again. He was unguided, misguided, and caused damage and destruction. Today also is the one-year anniversary of the massacre of 77 people in Norway by Anders Breivik. 77 people. Most of them, 69 of them, youth on retreats. In May, Mr. Breivik was put on trial. Reports from the trial indicate that he shows absolutely no remorse for what he did. One news article I read even said that while the camera came on him in the courtroom, he was smirking. Where's his guidance system? Who is his shepherd? That not only could he do this horrendous act of violence, but show no remorse at all for what he did. Now maybe if you were covering that incident or listening to it after it happened, you heard some rumors about that Anders Breivik was motivated by his Christian faith. Is that the shepherd that you know? Would Jesus lead you to do such an act? Can we be convinced that it was Christ who motivated Mr. Breivik to do what he did, to take 77 lives? I hope not. I hope that's not your understanding of what happened a year ago in Norway or a few days ago in Colorado. If it is, we have to talk, because that's not how we understand God's activity in this world. The problem is not with the shepherd. The problem is with the sheep. And why is it so much worse, or does it seem so much worse for our world in our day? Because now we've taken this flock of sheep called the human race. And you know that we've always been a little bit misguided because we don't really want a shepherd. I could do that job for myself. But now in our day, what seems to be qualitatively different is that we've taken a misguided flock of sheep and we've armed them. Can you imagine how dangerous that would be, to arm sheep with assault rifles and pistols? Oh my goodness. But that's exactly what we've done, or allowed to happen. Now, I give my respect to any members of the congregation who are members of the NRA. I feel like I'm on a little shaky ground here and don't want to offend anybody, but I do think we need to take a pretty clear evaluation of what our priorities are and how much is enough. So I want to be clear about that. You have to ask yourself how a man like James Holmes could purchase for himself multiple weapons, 6,000 rounds of ammunition, and protective gear so that he can go and do the things that he did. It's like arming the sheep. And there's an aspect of that reality that we all need to look at in terms of our society and our safety. I guess I've fallen into the trap of the newscasters and told you what the message is here. It's something to think about. What does it mean to be sheep without a shepherd? It means that we wander off on our own and get ourselves in trouble. And why does that happen to us? Because we don't really want a shepherd. Because too often in our lives we feel that we can do it on our own. That we can make our own decisions. That we know what's best for us. Until experience tells us differently. That often we don't. We need the guidance, the participation, the community that will help us to walk a better path. Like it says in the song, that most beloved of the Psalms, He leads me in right pathways. Now, if you've ever been in a wrong pathway, you know how uncomfortable that is. You have to be in that wrong pathway for quite a long time for it to ever become comfortable and natural to you. And that's sad that somebody never told you you're going the wrong way, or that you didn't have the support or the stability to listen to them and fix the pathway under the guidance of a good shepherd. But it's never too late. That's the message of the gospel. It's never too late. God is always calling us back onto a right pathway that we can walk and find blessing even in the worst of circumstances. God is always inviting us to be shepherded. And here's some rather dangerous news for those who are not good shepherds. I hope you heard that in the reading that Marianne shared this morning from Jeremiah. God is usually pretty calm. Sometimes God gets a little bit angry. But here in Jeremiah, we heard God at what seems to me to be one of his angriest moments. When she says to the people of Israel, especially their leaders, "Woe to you shepherds who lead my people along the wrong pathways." Because, and read it again, God says, "I'm going to get you for it. I'll show you." When you have responsibility, either as a parent or a friend or a co-worker, or any of those roles that give us responsibility for another person's life to guide them and shepherd them, God says that we have to take that with both ultimate seriousness and ultimate grace. That we have to be absolutely sure that the things that we are doing in relationship to that other person are for their good and well-being, to guide them along right pathways, and that we do it with grace and compassion. Mark reminded us of that right there as Jesus comes ashore after spending some time with his disciples, and the people are so needy that they come running from everywhere because they just want what they know he has. They want some of his love and compassion. They want to be important. They want to know deep in their very being that God cares about them as individuals and will work to heal them. That's what they want to know. And they see that in the actions and the teachings of Jesus. And so they come out to him, and you would think that if Jesus was confronted with this runaway herd of sheep, he'd be saying, "Oh my gosh, get me out of here. These people want too much." But instead, Mark tells us that he was moved with compassion because he saw the people to be sheep without a shepherd, and so became their shepherd for them and for us. So how do you be a good sheep? Acknowledge that you need a shepherd. Acknowledge that you can't do it on your own. Not all of it. Acknowledge that God has a path that God intends for you to walk. And try your best to find that and walk it. And if you're straying, let the community bring correction to you, support, love, care, to help you stay on the right path, to help you find a ground and a basis for your faith and your health and your joy, your deep, deep joy. It's so hard to be sheep without a shepherd. We don't go in the right direction. We stray. We get confused. And we do bad things that harm ourselves and others. Notice that when Jesus came ashore and saw the needy crowd, he didn't say, "You people are in this situation because of what you've done to yourselves." Rather, he says, moved with compassion, disciples take care of their needs, and thus forms this wonderful community of love and grace. Maybe the reason that we find ourselves too often as sheep without a shepherd is because we take ourselves way too seriously. We think we're way too important than we actually are. Our importance, our value comes in relationship with God and one another. And when we lose sight of that and isolate ourselves, that's when dangerous things happen. When we think we know. When we think we have the answers. It's interesting to me is that so many of the recent people who have committed mass killings have left a manifesto behind. Their perspective on things, why they did what they did, how they saw the world and what was going on in it. And if you read even a little bit of those from people like Anders Breivik or Ted Kaczynski, it's clear that their perspective is wrong, skewed, corrupted. They're misguided because there was no one to check that perspective out with them. And so they went their own way. And we live with the results. So the question for us as Christians, as believers, Where was God that night in the movie theater? Well, there's ample witness that God was there. And the man who stepped in front of his girlfriend and saved her life and lost his own. Sisters and brothers, is that not the face of Jesus in the midst of tragedy and death? To give oneself for the sake of another, and that happened not once but twice and many times in that movie theater that night. Inspiring us with the better part of our human nature, that when guided by higher ideals, by the ideal of love and compassion, we indeed do great things. God works to make wonderful things happen in us and through us. And sometimes the cost is great, but always worth it. Good news. Pastor Jack has finished his climb up Mount Kilimanjaro with his 3 traveling companions and has safely returned to the earth that we all share together, had himself a nice warm shower, and is just thrilled by the experience. He took a risk. He pushed himself to some very great limits in order to accomplish what he did. But it was for the sake of a greater good, for the eradication of the scourge of malaria. He was a sheep guided by a good shepherd who led him to do this for the sake of others. And we celebrate with him and with Linda and his family. I don't know if you were following his tweets. You guys know tweets, not the little birds. Well, one of them was he had tweeted at one point after getting down the mountain. He said, I'll share some of my thoughts about what this means to me as I have a chance to process them. And the first one was, dream great dreams with a generous God. I think that was close to what he said. Dream great dreams with a generous God. And that seems to be so much a deep understanding of what God can accomplish through us when our goals and our values are those that we share with Jesus. To give ourselves in the ways that God allows us for the sake of others. So here's the reality in the midst of a chaotic, sometimes random, and often frightening world. God never abandons us. God always seeks to shepherd us, to guide us, to walk alongside of us, so that we might enjoy this gift of life that God has given us and use it as a blessing for others. Sheep are like missiles. Guided ones do much more than unguided and misguided ones. My encouragement to you this morning is that you would not be missiles, but sheep, following Jesus into the paths that he would guide you in your life and find blessing and peace and joy. Amen.